I was in a plastic chair that squeaked every time I shifted, scrolling through a group chat like it was any other boring Tuesday. I typed, "My surgery is on the 15th. I just need someone to drive me home." Mundane, simple. Then the screen blinked with Heather's reply. "LOL, you actually thought we would miss Cabo for that." A second later, my mom chimed in. "Do not guilt us. This trip has been planned for months." My throat went tight. I typed 2 words. "My mistake." I set the phone face down and stopped explaining. That tiny choice saved me in ways I did not understand yet. Because when a nurse called my mother from the hospital later, that Cabo trip did not just change. It detonated. After that call, I never saw any of them the same way again. My name is Amber Williams. I am 31, the middle child who triple checks the stove and keeps 3 phone chargers in my tote because I am the one people text when their battery is dying. I am the designated driver on road trips because I get carsick if I am not at the wheel, and I like knowing where the exits are. I label my spice jars and my files. Reliable is the word my family uses like a compliment and a job title. A few quick things that matter later. My neighbor Mrs. Patel makes chai that tastes like calm, and she worries over me like I am her second daughter. My mom wears a chunky turquoise bracelet I gave her for Mother's Day, and she never takes it off. And there is a nurse with a steady voice who will do something I could not do for myself. I know that sounds cryptic. Hold on. This is important. Picture the room. Waiting area coffee that tastes like cardboard. The hum of the soda machine, a ficus plant with 3 yellow leaves. Outside Chicago, spring was pretending to be warm and everyone else seemed to have a hand to hold. I had a canvas tote with my sketch pad and a granola bar because that is who I am. I cracked a joke to the receptionist about my nerves squeaking louder than the chair, and she laughed the way people laugh when they do not know what to say next. If you have ever been the responsible one, you know that laugh. It says you look like you have it handled. It says I will focus on someone who does not. Relationships first, drama later. My sister Heather is the baby sunshine and selfies. My brother Jake is the golden boy, the one with ideas and a knack for making his messes sound like adventures. My mom Sandra is a planner who loves an itinerary more than she loves admitting she is wrong. My dad believes in solutions you can hold in your hand like a tool or a plane ticket. And me. I hold the invisible things. Calendars, reminders, the family group chat when no one else wants to be the bad guy. I wrote the text about my surgery the same way I write reminders to myself. Clear, short, no drama. Outpatient on the 15th, need a ride home. I could have called, but the group chat felt less like begging. When Heather's message landed, it sounded like a joke until it didn't. LOL, you actually thought we would miss Cabo for that. It is funny how a single sentence can make the air feel thinner. My mom's follow-up arrived like a stamp on my forehead. Do not guilt us. This trip has been planned for months. The subtext was louder than the words. You will be fine. You always are. Here is the part where I should tell you I pushed back that I told them everything. I did not. I swallowed, typed, "My mistake," and let the silence ring. Looking back now, that silence was not weakness. It was the moment the story turned. I had already started to notice how different this surgery felt from the way I wanted to talk about it. I kept thinking about practical things. The button-up shirt I would need so I did not lift my arms. The soft foods I should stock. The way anesthesia lingers like fog. These are the thoughts you have when you are alone. I will get to the nurse and the phone call, I promise. For now, you should know who I am when I am not being tested. I am a freelance graphic designer who lives 20 minutes from my parents in a small apartment with sage green walls I painted myself. My cat Milo follows me from room to room like he is on a patrol. I carry a tiny first aid kit in my bag and once used it to fix a blister on a stranger's heel in a grocery store. I always leave 10 minutes early. I keep a paper list on my fridge because checking a box feels like landing a plane. I am telling you this because it explains what happens next. The reason I asked for only a ride, not a whole production, is because I was trained by my own life to need less than I actually need. And the reason this story turns into something no one in my family saw coming is because I finally stopped translating my fear into convenience for other people. One more detail to plant before we move on. My neighbor Mrs. Patel had promised to feed Milo while I was at the hospital, and she had said, "You must let me know if you need anything else." The way she said anything else made my eyes sting, and I laughed it off because that is my reflex. Self-deprecating, keep it light, keep it moving. As if I were not shaking when I set my phone face down. As if that 2-word reply, "my mistake," Did not feel like stepping off a ledge I had spent years building with my own hands. I know, I know. You want the hospital call. It is coming. First, you need to see the world the way I saw it. Neat edges and labeled shelves, so when the edges blur, you understand why it mattered. You need to meet my mother, the planner, my sister, the baby, my brother, with charm to spare, and me, the human buffer. Because when the nurse spoke and the beach sounds on the other end of the line went quiet, those rolls cracked. And once I heard the crack, I could not unhear it. If you have been here before at the edge of a choice between being liked and being honest, you already know the feeling in my chest. If you have not, stay with me. Drop a quick comment telling me where you are listening from and if you are the responsible one in your family. It helps me feel less alone and it helps this story find the people who need it. I promise I will earn the next 3 minutes. The morning after I typed my mistake, my phone lit up with a missed call from Mom and no voicemail, which told me everything. When I called back, she skipped hello and went straight to injury. Are you trying to make me feel bad? The way she said bad sounded like a hotel surcharge. I said I just needed a ride home. She listed deposits, snorkel bookings, Heather's stress, Jake's plans. Every reason had a person attached to it. None of those people were me. Can you reschedule or ask a friend? The subtext was the same as always. You'll manage, you always do. Looking back now, that sentence is the spine of our family folklore. It started when I was 18 and New York said yes to art school and my parents said, be reasonable. Dad's back had gone out. Money was tight. I was the child who knew how to handle things. I told myself it was noble to stay. The noble thing calcified into a role. It shows up in small places like the way I keep a file of warranty manuals no one else reads, and the way Mom's fridge at Thanksgiving holds 5 kinds of mustard but forgets that I like the cranberry sauce with orange zest. It's a pattern that whispers, you'll be fine. While Mom was reminding me about the non-refundable Cabo package, I watched Milo thump his tail against the couch and thought about the other patterns I had trained myself not to see. Jake's startup pitch that took my $15,000 and my silence. Heather's 2 a.m. sob sessions that ended with me on the phone and her asleep before I could hang up. The way I laughed things off because people stay if you are easy. It started long before the surgery, but the surgery turned the volume up. Here's the part I hadn't told them. By the time I sent that group text, I already knew the word. Carcinoma. Dr. Carter had called me to come in, sat with me pointed at the grainy bloom on the ultrasound. 4 centimeters right lobe, we need a biopsy. I lay under cold gel while a tech kept her face neutral, and the ceiling stain above me looked like a rabbit. I held apple juice afterward in the smallest carton I'd ever seen, and tried to drink without shaking. The biopsy was quick and not quick at all. Lidocaine pinch pressure, don't move. A nurse's hand on my shoulder, human warmth, in a room of steel. When the results came, Dr. Carter's voice was steady. Papillary thyroid carcinoma, highly treatable, surgery soon. I heard treatable and still felt the floor tilt. If you're wondering why I texted need a ride instead of, it's cancer, it's because history taught me to present small versions of big things. People don't argue with small things. That night, I priced medical transport, $300 for a straight line from my door to the hospital and back. I booked it anyway and felt the number burn in my chest as it hit my card. I texted Mrs. Patel to confirm she'd feed Milo. Anything else beta, she wrote, and I stared at those 2 words until my eyes stung. I muted the family chat when Heather posted a dressing room selfie in her new swimsuit, and Dad commented prettiest girl on the beach. I bought applesauce yogurt, instant mashed potatoes broth, and popsicles in rainbow colors because a small part of me still believes color helps. I stacked gauze tape and throat spray on my counter. I filled my prescription and tucked the printout into a folder I labeled post-op. That's who I am. Order first, panic later. It started earlier than this, the skill of making order. When Jake's car died my sophomore year and I had the only savings, I handed it over without asking for a receipt. When Heather borrowed my dress and returned it with a coffee stain shaped like a comma, I learned how to remove it and said, don't worry. When Paul told me during our breakup that he couldn't compete with my family's emergencies, I said I understood and apologized for being so reliable it hurt. Looking back now, every yes was a rehearsal for this silence. Present day again, Dr. Thompson's consultation. Silver-haired, direct, the kind of doctor who trusts you with real words. Given the size and the look, we remove the right lobe, maybe the left if we see more. Nerve risk to the voice. Bleeding risk? Calcium dips. Most patients do well. Then the question that lodged under my skin. Who's staying with you those first 72 hours? I said I had it covered and watched his eyebrow do the math. Alone after anesthesia is not ideal. He didn't scold. He handed me consent forms and a pen that felt heavier than it should. The hallway smelled like antiseptic and citrus. That's where Christine found me. She had the efficient kindness of someone who knows exactly what to do and refuses to be dramatic about it. I heard you'll be alone. Take my number. Call if anything feels off. Would you like me to speak to your family? Sometimes people don't grasp the seriousness. I said they were in Cabo. I said it like an alibi. She didn't roll her eyes. She just nodded like she'd seen this script before. This is important. I said no. Pride is expensive. Backstory again in case you're wondering why my no felt automatic. It started when being easy to care for was the way I was praised. A quiet baby? An independent kid? The teenager who learned to drive early so she could run errands. By Christmases, we split like habits. Heather set the table pretty. Jake carved the meat. I washed dishes alone while the game droned on in the living room. Mom once told me I was lucky to be so independent. She meant it as an apology she didn't want to say. That's why when I faced the word cancer, I translated it into logistics. Button-up shirt so I don't lift my arms. Small pillow to press to my throat in the car. Whiteboard and marker in case my voice goes hoarse. A tiny bell for when Mrs. Patel drops by and I can't yell over the kettle. Minor hook for you because it matters soon. The bell will make more noise than any speech I could have given. Present again. I walked my apartment making a plan like I was storyboarding a design project. Soft sheets on the bed, meds lined up by time of day, a list on the fridge with checkboxes and circles next to the doses. I told my clients I'd be offline for a week and finish the urgent work by 2 in the morning. The glow of my tablet painting the walls a washed-out blue. I charged my phone, my backup battery, my backup. I packed my canvas tote. I left the group chat muted and sat with the quiet. Fear takes up less space when you give it a list. Anger does not. It started to simmer the night Jake texted sorry about the surgery thing, bad timing with Cabo. Need anything before we leave? Need anything like the offer to grab paper towels? I typed, I'm all set. He sent a thumbs up. I stared at the yellow digit like it was proof of something I hadn't wanted to prove. Looking back now, I think the anger helped. It kept me upright when the panic wanted me to fold. It kept me from calling them again and begging. It made room for a different ending. One more breadcrumb before we move forward. Mom's chunky turquoise bracelet. I bought it at a street market 3 Mother's Days ago because she said it made her feel lucky. She wears it on trips for good flights and friendly hotel clerks. In the recovery room, that bracelet will touch my sheet before her voice reaches me. I'm not there yet. I am at my kitchen counter with a lined notepad writing questions for Dr. Thompson while the refrigerator hums and Milo watches me with his serious green eyes. Present and past braid together like that when you're bracing. You inventory who you've been to decide who you are allowed to be next. I'd been the person who softened disasters into errands. In 48 hours, I would learn to let other people carry the heavy end. But first, the van would arrive, the chair would squeak, and the ordinary would tilt into a bright, cold room where a nurse with a steady voice would make a call I refused to make. The morning of surgery arrived in slow colors pink, sliding into pale gold across my window while I sipped my last allowed water and checked the list on my fridge with a pen that clicked louder than it needed to. Button-up shirt check, pillow to hug against my throat check, phone charger, and backup check. The small bell on the coffee table caught the light and made the tiniest sound when I brushed past it like it wanted to be counted too. Milo watched me from the arm of the couch with that steady cat seriousness that makes you feel seen and judged at the same time. I told him I would be home by afternoon and hoped I was not lying. The transport van pulled up right on time, white and clean and impersonal. The seat was vinyl and cold even through my jeans. The driver was polite and quiet. Radio turned down to a low murmur. Chicago was waking up as we merged onto the Main Street buses, sighing at stops, a runner in a neon jacket ghosting past like part of a dream. I kept my hands wrapped around my tote strap and focused on breath in, breath out. Breadcrumb 1. The pillow in my lap was small and soft and already warm. I knew I would need it later for every bump in the road. At the hospital, the volunteer with purple reading glasses processed me with brisk kindness. She asked if my husband was parking the car, and when I said I came alone, her smile flickered and then found its footing again. Hospital policy says someone has to pick you up after anesthesia, she said. I told her transport was arranged. She gave me a pager and pointed me to the seats by the ficus with 3 yellow leaves. The coffee machine made that hollow gurgle that always promises more than it delivers. Across the room, people sat in twos and threes, leaning into each other, hands stacked, shoulders touching. Every pair looked like a little bridge. I felt like a loose plank. I told myself it was fine, this was outpatient simple. That was the first false explanation, the one I had been repeating since the biopsy, as if saying it enough times might make it true. Buzz. A nurse led me to pre-op behind a curtain where the air was cooler and the light was the exact color of caution. She wrapped the blood pressure cuff around my arm, swabbed the IV site with alcohol that stung up my nose, and slid the catheter in with a practiced small pinch. I watched the line of clear fluid drip and thought about how many thousands of times this exact drip had been watched by people trying not to be afraid. She checked boxes on a screen and asked who was waiting for me. No one, I said. She nodded neutral, but I saw the note appear on my chart, and it made my skin feel thinner. Breadcrumb 2. The hospital blanket they tucked around me was warmed and smelled faintly of starch. It helped more than I wanted to admit. Dr. Thompson stepped in with the calm of a man who has done this 1,000 times and still knows this is my first time. He reviewed the plan, tracing with a capped pen. Right lobe for sure, left lobe if indicated. Preserve the parathyroids and the recurrent laryngeal nerves, if at all possible. Risks include bleeding and temporary voice changes. His voice did not wobble on any of the words. Mine would have. Any questions? Just one, I said. How bad is it if I wake up alone? He did not sugarcoat. First 72 hours matter. Alone is not recommended. That sentence made something shift inside me, a quiet click, like a door catching. I wanted to argue. I almost said my transport counts. That was my second false explanation. Transport gets you to the curb. It does not sit on your couch while you figure out how to swallow. He squeezed my shoulder and left me to the flurry of the anesthesiologist who smelled faintly of gum and the resident who double-checked my name band and the timeout where they asked me to confirm the side and the procedure like a call and response. The curtain shushed back and Christine appeared. Efficient, steady the exact temperature of voice you want when all your edges feel frayed. I heard you are still alone, she said gently. May I sit? I nodded. She pulled up the stool and lowered her voice like she had set this conversation down between patients 100 times. Amber, you are prepared? You are also minimizing how serious this is. It is treatable, yes. It is still surgery near your airway with real risks. I stared at the metal railing of the gurney and the reflection that looked like a narrow river. I told her about Cabo like it explained something about me. She did not flinch. Would you like me to call your mother? She asked. People hear the word surgery and think stitches and a nap. People hear the word cancer and they show up. The thought of handing her my mother's number made my ribs feel tight. I could hear the excuses I had lined up to protect them and protect myself. They will not have service. They will say I am guilting them. They will promise to call later and not call. Also the smaller, meaner fear. If I let someone else announce my fear out loud, I cannot shrink it back down. The IV pump clicked, and I found myself thinking about the apple juice box after the biopsy, how the straw had bent and creased because I was pressing too hard. I have been white-knuckling my life for years, I thought. Maybe it is time to loosen my grip. I still hesitated. Christine waited me out. She did not crowd my silence, too. She let it stretch until it became an answer. Okay, I said. Call her. I gave her the number and the caveat about international data and resort Wi-Fi, and she nodded like this was a puzzle with pieces she knew how to find. I will be clear and kind and firm, she said. If she misses the call, I will leave a message that cannot be misunderstood. I watched her step away into a corner with decent reception phone to her ear. Head inclined to posture, already saying what I could not. The anesthesiologist returned and ran through his checklist. Any allergies? Last intake of liquids? History of nausea? His tone was professional but easier now, like my decision had softened the room. I pulled the warm blanket higher and realized my hands had stopped shaking. Breadcrumb 3. The whiteboard I had packed marker clipped to the top sat in my tote under the chair, and for a second, I imagined writing to myself on it like a sign in a storefront. You are allowed to be taken care of. My pager face down on the tray caught a slice of light and flashed a faint ghost of my reflection. I looked like a person who might do something brave. In the hallway, a gurney rolled past wheels, squeaking in a rhythm that sounded almost like a breath. That detail lodged and stayed. The resident returned to mark a small X near my collarbone with a pen that felt cold. He explained where the incision would be and how the adhesive would sit, and warned me about the pressure bandage. It was weirdly comforting to hear about tape. Tape, I understand. Tape has rules. Another breadcrumb. The consent forms were back, and this time I read each line. Injury to the laryngeal nerves. Hypocalcemia requiring supplementation. Bleeding. Infection. The line for signature waited like a held breath. I signed my full legal name and felt the smallest flare of certainty. Not that everything would be easy, but that I was choosing the right hard thing. Christine slipped back to my bedside. I spoke to your mother, she said, voice soft but not apologetic. I explained the diagnosis and the plan and the specific risks of the first 72 hours. I told her you have arranged transport and a neighbor check-in, and that it is not sufficient. She heard me. That was all she said. She did not tell me what my mother said. She did not promise the ending. It was better that way. The truth was enough. The room moved forward on its own after that. Hair tucked into a cap, hospital socks with the rubber dots, the slow roll toward the double doors. The lights in the ceiling passed overhead in identical squares, the pattern like graph paper, and I kept my eyes on them so I would not think about what I could not control. I whispered to myself that the sky outside was probably still blue and that the color would be there when I woke up. The operating room was colder and brighter, a white that felt like standing too close to snow. Beeps layered over each other in a calm practice conversation. Someone took my hand and positioned it just so. The mask hovered. Deep breaths, the anesthesiologist said. You will feel like you are floating. Count back from 10. I let air expand my lungs and tasted the faintest sweetness of gas. 10. I thought of the small bell on my coffee table and how ridiculous and perfect it was to ask for help with a sound that could not be ignored. 9. I thought of the volunteers' purple glasses and how they made me feel briefly like I was part of a plan. 8. I saw a flash of turquoise in my mind, the bracelet I had given my mother, the one she wears when she travels, and for the first time, I wanted her to be wearing it here. 7. I decided I would stop translating my fear into convenience, even if I had to learn it in a recovery room with a pen and a pad. 6. The lights blurred at the edges. 5. Beeps steadied into a metronome. 4. The blanket held its heat like a promise. 3. Somewhere a phone would ring in a place with ocean in the background and a nurse's voice would be the clearest thing in the world. 2. The mask smelled like plastic and sleep. 1. And then I let go. I surfaced like I was swimming up through syrup, the beeping first, then the burn in my throat, a hot line under the tape that tugged every time I swallowed. The air smelled like antiseptic and something sweet from the anesthesia, and for a second I forgot how to breathe, chest fluttering until the rhythm of the monitor steadied me. Cold crept from the IV into my wrist. Rubber soles squeaked somewhere. The blanket over me was still warm, a small mercy. I turned my head a fraction and pain flashed bright white at the edges. Surface discovery came in pieces, a nurse's voice soft and practiced. Surgery's done. You're safe. Dr. Thompson will explain. I tried to ask and my voice rasped like sandpaper, so she lifted a spoon of ice chips to my mouth, and the relief was enough to make my eyes sting. Then a weight I didn't expect warm against my hand, the faint powdery floral perfume I know better than my own. Dark hair with silver threads, the turquoise bracelet I bought at a street market 3 Mother's Days ago, resting on the sheet near my wrist, cool and real. Mom. For a second I thought I was dreaming Cabo into the room, but her eyes were red in a way sunscreen can't explain. She whispered my name like she was stepping on holy ground. Behind her, Dad's jaw clenched in that way he does when the plane hits turbulence, Jake with airport hair and regret in his posture, Heather blotting her mascara with a wad of hotel tissues. The room tilted. I blinked hard and the ceiling lights doubled. Sensory overload narrowed everything, adhesive tug at my neck of beep, the clink of metal somewhere, my heart pounding in my ears. I looked past them and caught a square of sky through a high window. It was still blue. The world hadn't noticed my incision. Symbolic, annoying, comforting, all at once. Dr. Thompson appeared, silver hair combed back, voice a steady rail. We removed the entire thyroid, both lobes showed involvement, but the capsule was intact. Parathyroids preserved recurrent laryngeal nerves intact. You'll need radioactive iodine as a precaution. Prognosis is excellent. Those were the facts. Surface truth? What happened? I nodded, tiny, the motion sending a bright ache through the bandage. He left instructions like stepping stones and the nurse checked the drip and I felt my grip on the gurney loosen by a hair. Then the deeper betrayal slid in, quiet and sharp. Mom squeezed my fingers. We're here. We came back as soon as we heard. as soon as we heard. Not when I asked, not when the group chat pinged. As soon as a stranger said the word, I could not make my mouth say to them. Christine stood at the curtain's edge, not intruding her gaze steady. I didn't need a recap to connect the dots. She had made the call I wouldn't. She had said the word, I had shrunken into logistics. People hear surgery and think stitches and a nap. People hear cancer and buy the next flight out. That was the why it happened. Not because they suddenly knew me, because they finally knew the size of the thing. Pattern recognition clicked like a lock I'd been rattling my whole life. How long has this been happening? Years of me translating emergencies into errands so no one would be inconvenienced. Years of them responding only to sirens they could hear. I had rung a tiny bell for myself for so long that no one recognized it as an alarm. It took a nurse's voice over ocean noise to make them look up. The memories layered themselves like transparencies. Apple juice in a tiny box after the biopsy straw bent because I gripped too hard. The water stain on the ultrasound ceiling that looked like a rabbit I stared at to keep from crying. The volunteer's purple glasses at check in the ficus with 3 yellow leaves, small proofs that I was there even if no one else was. The pager reflection catching a slice of my face. The whiteboard and marker in my tote in case my voice failed me. The pillow I had warmed with my hands for the ride home because I believed I'd be holding it alone. All of it threaded into this moment where my mother's bracelet flashed and her voice shook, and I realized I was shaking for a different reason. Not fear. Recognition. I reached for the whiteboard with a clumsy hand and wrote 2 words because my throat couldn't shape them. You knew. Mom read and winced like the word itself had edges. We didn't, she whispered. And then smaller, we didn't ask. Jake's mouth opened and closed. Heather's apology started and stopped. I'm so, and fell off a cliff. I looked at Christine and she didn't nod or smile or rescue us. She just let the gravity of the truth hold. The monitor ticked on. Somewhere a cart rolled by and its wheels made that same 2-note squeak from pre-op, and I felt the heat rise behind my eyes. I breathed slow, rough in through the nose because my throat rebelled. The sky was still blue. The tape still tugged. The room smelled like citrus and alcohol. Everything ordinary persisted while my understanding rearranged itself. This is the part of the story where people expect yelling. I didn't have the breath for it. Quiet can be sharper. I wrote again. You came because she said cancer, not because I said help. The hurt in Mom's face was old and new. She nodded and didn't try to pretty it. You're right, we failed you. The sentence landed like gravel crunching under a car tire, rough, undeniable, necessary. The power moved barely, but I felt it. From me holding the family's weight in invisible lists to them meeting my eyes without flinching from what they'd done. I realized I wasn't floating anymore. I was landing, not softly, but landing. And when Dr. Thompson returned with aftercare instructions and risks, and the reminder about the first 72 hours, my family leaned forward as if to shield the words with their bodies. It connected every breadcrumb. The bell, the bracelet, the blanket, the squeak, the purple glasses, the rabbit stain, the apple juice, the tape. All the small things I had cataloged while begging myself not to need anything. They formed an arrow pointing to this. I hadn't been asking too much. I'd been asking the wrong way in a language my family only heard when it echoed off a hospital wall. The room settled into a quiet so dense you could hear the IV think. Mom's bracelet clicked against the rail, a tiny, guilty metronome. Dad stood with a styrofoam cup of coffee he wasn't drinking. Jake still had an airline tag flapping from his backpack. Heather's mascara had smudged into a comma near her cheekbone. I curled my fingers around the whiteboard marker and felt the rubber grip tack against my skin. My voice was a rasp that hurt to use, so I kept writing. Here is what will happen. 4 sets of eyes lifted like students who didn't study. Christine didn't rescue them. She handed me a fresh marker like she was handing me a microphone. I underlined the words and wrote first 72 hours equals not optional. No Cabo talk, no jokes, no guilt. Mom's mouth opened reflex first and then she closed it again. Power shifts quietly sometimes. It was happening one swallowed comment at a time. I wrote the next line. If you're staying, you take a job. Dad leaned forward. Tell me what to do. His voice had a grit I recognized from flat tires and broken faucets. Useful grit. I drew boxes like a designer laying out a page. Meds, food, night shift, appointments. I put names and pencil strokes deliberate and slow. Mom, you run the pill chart. Write-downs. Timers. No ad-libbing. Teach back the doses before we leave this room. She nodded, quick and small, and reached for her reading glasses with hands that were finally shaking. Dad, your transport and stairs. I do not climb alone. If I need an ER at 3 in the morning, you don't argue. You drive. He said okay so fast it came out like one word. Heather groceries and soft food plus laundry. No selfies. She smiled through the tear tracks like she'd been waiting to be told something real. Jake hovered shoulders up near his ears. And me, he said like he was afraid of the answer. I let the marker hang in the air for a beat he could feel. Money. You owe me $15,000. Start now. He swallowed, nodded once, and pulled his phone out like a lifeline. I can move 5 today, set up installments, bring the plan tonight. He looked me in the eye when he said it, which was new. Christine watched all of this with that steady clinical warmth that makes you behave better than you knew you could. She stepped in only to turn my notes into care. Let's walk it, she said, and made them repeat back the timing of pain meds. The calcium protocol, if my fingers tingled, the number to call if my voice went from hoarse to ghost. After the surgery, Christine made the whole family practice care helping hands, treating bleeding, changing bandages, distributing medicine. I wrote the rules on the board: don't fix me and ignore me. If you can't do it, say it right away. No heroes, no resentment. I agreed to call in a home nurse as a lifeline. I set a boundary. If you leave before the follow-up appointment, don't come back. The family said we're here. Jake transferred money with interest, but I reminded them that this was about fixing the pattern, not just money. Back home, everything ran on a checklist: alarm, medicine reminders, and having someone help you get around. The group chat changed its name to Amber Care Plan with rules: ask. Before you advise, prioritize the truth. Don't make the story your own. Don't disappear. The Cabo trip was canceled. The nurse came to confirm that the plan was okay because we were doing it on purpose. The following days fell into place. Mom read the medication list, apologized, and went to therapy. Dad quietly helped. Heather took care of the schedule. Jake paid on time. I, 131, rescheduled. I realized the turning point wasn't whether they stayed or went, but that I stopped playing it easy, made my needs known, set boundaries, and left room for backup. The scar is like a hyphen between the old me and the new me, strong because I dare to say what I need and demand competence without apology.